Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Politics Live. Thank you for joining me here on this fine Monday. It is still early Monday afternoon here on the West Coast, but I know on the East Coast that you all are sort of winding down your day. Hopefully you're at work being productive and or non-productive because everybody isn't in a job that they like. That's for sure. I want to thank you as always for supporting Politics Live and for your subscriptions, for you telling a friend, for hitting me with all the likes and all the things. Really appreciate your support and just keep on coming back. That's all I ask. Of course, naturally, as is the case every Monday and Wednesday and Friday, I tape a new episode of Flagrant and Funny. And that is the podcast that I have with Carrie Champion, and we have a good time. And we had a good time today. Let me let me tell you, a very good time. We spent probably too much time again discussing the habits or the sexual habits of Mormons. Yeah, listen, I couldn't explain to you if I tried, but more importantly, we had Annie Constable, who is a great reporter covering the WNBA for Front Office Sports, breaking down the WNBA negotiations, the new CBA agreement, which is very landmark. And I have some more thoughts on that, which I'll get to later on, as well as some other news in women's sports. Want to definitely discuss with you all this interaction that took place, that went viral over the weekend between Oluchi Okinawa and Brenda Fries, who is the coach of the Maryland Terrapins, and that interaction went viral. So we'll discuss, or I'll discuss that as well. But I want to start off by talking about what's happening at TSA. And as many of you all know, there have been a lot of reports about the goings on at the airports across the country, a lot of long lines, especially in Atlanta. The line that I saw from Atlanta, and then I try to weed through a lot of these because many of them look like they could be AI or just people using old footage. Like, you just never know these days. Like, are people, is it really this much drama going on at the airport, or are people purposely kind of putting out information that is not factual in order to stir the pot, to make money, just to kind of capitalize off division, strife, and anger? But it is true. I have had friends who are dealing with the Atlanta airport. Granted, they found a hack, and I love y'all, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because, but I'm sure if you do enough digging on social media, you'll figure out what the hack is in Atlanta, to how you can avoid those 3-4 hour TSA security lines. I traveled last week. I'm traveling again later this week. Traveled last week coming through LAX. It took me 5 minutes. Now, granted, I was going very early in the morning. Maybe that was part of the reason I didn't have to deal with it, but certainly my experience has nothing to do with what other people are going through across the country. Saw another woman who was shooting live video at the New Orleans airport. This woman, I felt so terrible for her. She stood in the security line for 5 hours. And when you see the footage of what is the security line in New Orleans, you are like, what in the world is going on here? She was in line for 5 hours. She purposely got to the airport early and still missed her flight. And because so many people are unable to get through these security lines, then the rebooking process is naturally a shit show. And so she wasn't able to get out for a couple of days. It was really messed up. So all across the country, from JFK to LaGuardia, so many different airports have lengthy security lines because we are in a partial government shutdown. And for those that have not been paying attention, this shutdown is over the Department of Homeland Security. And that's the reason why it's partial. The Republicans want more money for ICE. ICE already has so many billions coming. They now have more money than the U.S. Marines. ICE is very easily the second largest law enforcement agency in the federal government. They have every resource, more money than you can even imagine, but they want more. And we have seen what has happened with ICE as, in terms of the unfortunate, tragic deaths. Some would say murders. I think that, depending on your perspective, that certainly fits the bill of U.S. citizens beyond just their murders, which were tragic enough. We have seen how ICE has been operating in communities across the country, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Chicago. They have targeted specific communities and specific cities at the request of the president and of this presidential administration, that being Stephen Miller, who is the architect of a lot of what we are seeing now. So there are a huge number of Americans who are outraged by ICE and their behavior and their tactics. And now they want even more funding. And so the Democrats have decided to hold the line. However, that being said, they have offered many, many compromises. I want people to understand this very clearly. The Republicans own, or the Republicans are in charge of every lever of government. They have the Supreme Court, they have the House, they have the Senate, and they have the presidency. That is a checkmate across the board. So they have all of those, and yet we're in the position that we're in. Now, Democrats and Republicans came to an agreement that while they argue about the ICE funding, they are going to fund FEMA, TSA, and there was somebody else that was going to get funded also as a resort. And then Donald Trump came out and said, not so fast.
And I'm suggesting strongly to the Republican Party, don't make any deal on anything. The most important thing we can have is what's called the Save America Act. Don't make any deal on anything unless you include voter ID, and you have to be a citizen to vote. You have to show citizenship to vote. Very easy to do. It's very insulting when they say people can't do it because they don't know how to do it. Anybody that can't do it, I think it's a very insulting thing to say. The Democrats are fully to blame with the struggle of the great American public is going through at the airports. They're going through a big struggle right now, and we just put ICE in charge, and they're helping TSA, the agents, and they're working together so far very well. I actually suggested that in the airports they take off their masks, and they did that.
He said that like he did something, right? So just so we're clear, just so we are clear about how this is all going down, the president has advised the Republican Congress to not make a deal with the Democrats. That is what he said. The Republicans and the Democrats had a deal. This is not the first time. The Democrats have actually offered, I believe, 7 times. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 times. They have offered their Republican colleagues, hey, while we're arguing, while we're beefing about ICE, let's get ICE paid. Or I'm sorry, no, well, let's get TSA paid. 7 times. Here, let's fund TSA so that we don't get the chaos that we're seeing now at the airport. And the Republicans have said no. And now we know who ordered the code red. The code red was ordered by the president because he wants to shoehorn the Save America Act, which is diabolical. And that's about midterms, by the way. Essentially, a bunch of us would have to re-register to vote and go through a bunch of hoops that we don't have to go through now. You know why? Because the process is already in place. Because him and the Republicans have been able to sell this lie, this myth, that there is widespread voter fraud. And the little bit of fraud we have seen has been by people who are Republicans. So they have successfully sold this narrative that our elections need to be more secure, even though we have had, prior to Donald Trump contaminating the process and baking these lies as part of the general narrative being sold by the Republican Party about the fact that elections aren't safe. This is all a setup to the midterms, everybody. And I hope you all can connect these dots. The Save America Act is about a panic that Donald Trump is in because he knows what's coming. The Republicans know what's coming. People are upset. His approval rating is in the toilet. Nobody is happy with the economy. These gas prices are escalating. Everything that he promised he didn't do, and people can see you. We can feel it. So you cannot run from the fact that people, especially your people, are extraordinarily unhappy. So rather than actually attempt to govern and fix the problem, they instead want to rig the election. And that is what the Save America Act is actually about. It's not about election security. It's about rigging the election because Matt Gaetz has said it. Several Republicans are on record saying this. They know that if the Democrats are able to take control of the House and the Senate, which is trending in that direction, despite their own incompetency, which that's a story for another day. The first thing they're going to do is try to impeach Trump. Not try, will. They will impeach him. People are going to go to jail and they're going to impeach him because I think, and I could be wrong, but I think the party understands now that the will of their base, and really the will of a lot of Americans, this is not limited to just Democrats, is that there's some people that need to be held accountable for some things. So all these little shady deals, all these little mergers, all those things that are happening, there are many Democrats who have been on record be like, don't let these musical chairs run out and you ain't got a chair, because trust me, we coming for your ass first and last. So that is why there's the panic. That is why something must be done about the midterms, because he can't stop he can't stop the tide. He cannot stem the tide. The tide is not moving in his direction and he can't stop it. So the only way to stop it is by throwing every distraction in the book and creating a sense of chaos around the elections and doing what he has done now, which is deploy ICE to airports. Now, many of you are workers. I couldn't think of something that would piss me off more if I'm a TSA agent. Here you are at TSA. You haven't been paid in weeks. If not, it's probably months at this point. You haven't been paid. And the federal government chooses, instead of paying you your money that you've earned, they deploy ICE to the airports so you can sit there and watch these non-helpful dudes and women, people. I don't really actually want to call them that. There's a stronger word I like to use. You have to sit there and watch these non-helpful goons do nothing but harass people, because ICE is not trained to work the screening operations, the screening machines. They're not trained to do that. So they're literally sitting around and doing absolutely nothing but getting on people's nerve and breathing down people's necks. Do you know how mad you would be as a TSA agent if you had to sit there unpaid doing the actual work and watching these mugs stroll around the airport not doing anything, and they're getting paid? Not only that, they're going to get bonuses at the end of every year that they're in ICE to the tune of $10,000 while you're unpaid doing your actual job. I don't wish that on anybody. Couldn't be me. And I'm not surprised hundreds of TSA workers have already quit. Not surprised in the slightest. Because that is just an insult to everybody's intelligence. And not surprisingly, this is what we're seeing already happening at the airport now that ICE has shown up.
What's your name? Can show the badge. Where's a badge?
Where's your badge?
Can someone call 911?
Okay.
Where's your badge? Can I see? Let me see your badge.
Okay.
No, can I see your badge? I don't know if that's legitimate.
Is this ICE?
Can I see your badge number, sir? What is your name? What is your name? Where's your badge number? I'm asking for your badge number, sir. What is your badge number? What is your badge number?
So ICE agent in San Francisco, they're not at every airport. They're only at about roughly 12 airports. They detained a woman, took her from her daughter. We don't know why. We don't know where they're taking her. at the airport. And here's more
Leave
footage of
her
that.
alone! Fucking, what are you doing?
Leave her alone!
What the hell are you doing?
I hope you're so fucking proud of yourselves, you fucking assholes. You're on video now, too. Yeah. Shame on you. You fucking un-American pieces of shit.
And I'm glad the people had their back. Already, we know for the first time in the history of ICE, the majority polling shows across the board, whether Republican or Democrat or independent, the majority of people do not support ICE. And for the first time, the majority would like to actually see ICE abolished. And they're walking into airports, unmasked finally, with tactical gear and zip ties, harassing people. There was this one photo I saw, and I was like, man, I know this dude is upset. Where ICE was standing behind a TSA agent who was doing their job, checking everybody's IDs, and they just standing there doing absolutely nothing because the lines at the airport are still long. They're not helping with that process at all. According to the president, he said they were there because it's fertile. He said they were there to help. Help do what? Who knows? But also that it was, quote, fertile ground for stopping illegal immigration. Now, Smokey, I ain't the smartest person in the world, but let me ask y'all something right now who are listening and watching on live. Do you think that most people who are trying to get to the country illegally come through Southwest? Do you think they are booking a flight on Delta and coming to the United States? Do you think that somebody who is trying to cross illegally with no documentation is deciding, you know what? Let me get Southwest $59 each way and make my way to America. If anyone has traveled internationally before in the chat, you know this to be true. When you step into a foreign country as a visitor, you are required to have a passport. You are required to fill out an immigration form, because on the immigration form, it asks you some very important questions. What are those questions? It asks you how much money you have, if that money exceeds $10,000. Are you carrying any fruits or vegetables or livestock that aren't approved for the country? They ask you where you're staying, how long you're going to be there. They ask you all this in addition to checking your documentation. They don't do this once. They do this multiple times. So again, let's just put our collective brain power together. If you are trying to be on some shady shit and coming to the US, is it a good idea that you put yourself at risk by going to an airport and booking a flight? And by the way, before you even get on the flight, you have to show the agents your passport. You have to do that to travel internationally. So, again, the president's exact words were fertile ground. Airports? Now, again, just thinking out loud here. If the airports were as fertile ground for illegal immigration as the president suggested, why are they in Minneapolis? Why are they at the border? Why are they these other places if supposedly the root of the problem was at the airport the whole time? I'm just trying to figure it out. Help me help you. Does this make any sense to all of you? This is not about political party. I'm asking you to put on your common sense cap. Are we curbing massive illegal immigration at the airport? The answer's no. So then, again, putting on that thinking cap is what would be the reason why he would send ICE. And by the way, now he's threatening to send the National Guard. So you want to send two groups of people who couldn't be more unhelpful to the airport to do what exactly? All you're doing is driving down tourism, which already was on the serious decline. Ask Las Vegas about that. Ask Florida about that. Because there were a great many parts of Florida and Las Vegas that relied on international travelers, especially Las Vegas. One of the main countries that they relied on for travel and tourism was Canada. One of the first countries he pissed off, and Canada decided to go 10 toes down and not travel to the US, not buy US products. They're still on that because of how he pissed them off before. So there's a number of states that are losing tourism because of that dude. So think about if you're traveling from overseas or traveling from any country, and you see that the president has deployed ICE and the National Guard to U.S. airports, Atlanta being a big one, because we know if you are on Delta, all things go through Atlanta. Number of international flights. That's a major international port, is Atlanta. If you see this is happening at the airport, would you really feel safe traveling to the United States? Because the only thing that ICE has to go on to determine why you're here, and especially at the airport, because it is legal to come visit the United States. As long as you have a passport, as long as you can fill out the required information, you can be here legally. That's all it requires. Now, the issue as it relates to illegal immigration, when it comes to flying in, the issue is that people often overstay their visas. That's usually the issue. But when they get here, they're legal. How long they stay here is another matter. So unless you're prepared to just say nobody who's not a United States citizen can't come through the airport, how do you determine who's going to be here for the right reason and who isn't? Who's going to stay the appropriate time and who isn't? How do you determine that? So the Supreme Court has already said that ICE is completely within their right to use racial profiling to justify detaining people. And now you have them roaming the airports. And much like we just saw in that video that I showed you, who do you think they're targeting? So this is just another way for people and for this administration to exert its might. The whole point is to intimidate everyone. The point is not to make people feel safe. The point is to make them feel unsafe and terrified and uneasy and unwelcome. Not everybody, because everybody doesn't fit the profile. Only some people do. And that's the point. Because this is a part of a larger, bigger, wider, scarier plan that involves basically ethnically cleansing America. And so now you're going to have a force of might being shown, a huge, gigantic cosplay at the airport of ICE agents. And oh, by the way, if the immigration problem in America is as bad as the conservatives and Republicans want you to think, how they got time to be going to these airports anyway? Because according to y'all rounding up people everywhere. And also, remember, ICE has a daily quota they must fill. They weren't filling the quota. You know why? Because they exaggerated the problem to get the type of widespread authoritarianism that they're now exhibiting. See, if you get people to fear things, you don't even have to do anything sneaky to get them to agree to their own rights being taken away. They will agree to that type of overreach in a minute under the guise that it's supposed to keep them safe. And that was the whole reason that ICE even started to begin with. We didn't have ICE before 9/11. We got ICE after 9/11 because I believe the wider point was to get the American people used to a militarized police force being a strong presence in our country. That's why the police got unlimited budgets for weaponry and they have military level equipment under the guise of securing the homeland. Everybody signed up for more surveillance, for more authoritarianism, and a more military-run occupation of this country. Everybody signed up for it under the guise of keeping us safe. And now that we see and understand more information about how 9/11 happened, we know that the call, and this is not a conspiracy theory, just so you guys understand, this is not a call, or this is a call in many ways from coming from inside the house because of the levels in which our government supported the people who were behind the support for those who attacked us on 9/11. So all of this is just one big Venn diagram. Ooh, what does this mean? Your channel is being flagged. Flagged for what? What is it being flagged for? I do not understand. Are they out to get me? Have I spoken too much truth? Well, good. The whole point is that we got to connect the dots. Another dot to connect is this one. Now, I admit I did not have the time, and in many ways, nor the inclination to read all of Project 2025. So I just got the Cliff Notes. I read various parts and passages just to be aware of sort of the major things. But one of the things that was in Project 25 as it relates to TSA was this. This is on page 158. So if you want to go to the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, which is essentially the blueprint for everything that we're seeing happening now. Last I read, they had implemented about 40% of Project 2025. And here is what happens to be on page 158. Excuse the small screen or the small type, but I will read this to you because this is important. The USA or the US should look to the Canadian and European private models of providing aviation screening manpower to lower TSA costs while maintaining security. Until it is privatized, TSA should be treated as a national security provider, and its workforce, this is the part that's interesting, should be deunionized immediately. TSA could privatize the screening function by expanding the current screening partnership program to all airports. TSA would turn screening operations over to the airports that would choose security contractors that would meet TSA regulations and would oversee and test airports for compliance. One thing about America gonna scam until it can't scam no more. So the thing is, the larger goal is to prioritize American security. They want to deunionize TSA as they spell out in Project 2025. And part of the way you make that happen is that you simply break them with shutdowns like this. You destroy morale. You make it easier to deunionize them so that you can then do what Republicans have been doing for quite a long time, is that they come in and they want to privatize everything, and then it winds up being a complete disaster. A complete disaster. They privatize the prisons. See, when you start turning services into for profit, that is when you have every incentive to keep the scam going. There are prisons who, because of the communities they are in, Louisiana comes to mind, the Angola prison comes to mind. that community can't survive without the prison. So then what does that mean? Well, that means that you have to keep supplying it with prisoners. So if you have to keep supplying it with prisoners, how do you do that? Oh, you have a criminal justice system that makes sure that once you get in it, you never get out of it. That's how you keep the prisons going. So a lot of the prisons are privatized, they're for profit. So they have every incentive not to rehabilitate people, but to fill the prisons. And because prisons are privatized, is there any surprise that America, I believe, has the highest prison population in the world? Is that in any way surprising? No, it is not. That's why you have people in prison who have done very little, or not done very little. They've broken the law. Some of them, not all of them. But it's why you have a judicial system set up to lock people up. Got to supply these prisons. And Louisiana is one of the best examples of why privatizing the prison is a bad idea. And if any of you watched The 13th, the wonderful documentary done by Ava DuVernay, then you would also know another reason why prisons are incentive to privatize. They're trying to turn profit. So what then do? They lease the prisoner services to major retailers such as Victoria's Secret. They are one. Macy's was another one. And the prisoners are the one who are packaging items to be sold in these stores for literally nothing, for like 15 cents an hour. So then it becomes a whole business, all based on one thing: making sure the prisons stay completely full. So with ICE, and well, I should say our government, as it relates to the ultimate objective being to fold the TSA as we know it and to deunionize them and to privatize that then becomes a great way to get your buddies paid. Because imagine, look, as it is, some of you probably live in cities where those airport deals look less than above board, where you have politicians making deals about who gets the airport contracts and who doesn't, and who gets, as it is. It is rife for corruption once you decide to privatize. So that's what Republicans want to do with everything, because it's the grift that never stops grifting. So yeah, they want to privatize TSA eventually. And this is a very expedient way to make that happen. Now, just so you all are clear about how TSA is paid, and while I understand why there has been a push, I've seen the different campaigns across social media where people are asking to donate to certain funds for TSA. And I think that's all good. And that's a very kind human gesture. But the issue, I want people to understand how TSA is paid. In addition to some of that coming through the federal government, we pay that. So when you buy an airline ticket, if you guys look at the fine print, you are charged a security fee already. You're charged a security fee that is supposed to cover the cost of TSA screening. So the American people are already paying for TSA. And because we must make sure we have the most ineffective and inefficient way possible for government to operate, we're paying it in every airline ticket that we buy. And they're not getting paid, because that's the way this country works. So, yeah, like, we've already paid for TSA and TSA is not getting paid. And what I am curious about is how this all ends. I think conservatives made a big mistake, or I won't put it on all conservatives. The president made a huge mistake by deploying ICE to these airports. There's going to be incidents. Optically, it looks terrible. It's going to make people afraid. It's going to have an unintended consequence that I don't even think, much like many of the decisions he makes, that he has entirely thought through what this will be. And I'm actually really surprised that the business community has allowed things to get this far. Now, on one hand, we see where when businesses and corporations and people with a lot of money, when they want something to be politically moved in their favor, they make sure that they put the money up to do it. They grease the right palms. We have, unfortunately, a pay-for-play system that did not start with Donald Trump. This has been kind of the theme of our politics. And if you're in the airline industry and you're seeing all of this unfold, and you know the impact that that can have on tourism, on people wanting to go to the airport, why are you standing by and allowing this to happen? I saw the United States flight attendants, they put out a statement saying, hey, you guys need to pay TSA. And what I really don't like about this is everybody keeps using a false equivalent and saying, blanketly, it's the government. No, this entire chaos is owned by one party, and that is the Republicans. Because much like we saw with immigration, there was a deal on the table for immigration, which would have been, in terms of immigration restrictions, one of the most hard-line immigration reforms we have ever seen. But Donald Trump, he told the Republican Party that they shouldn't strike a deal with Joe Biden because he does not and did not want Joe Biden to have a victory on immigration. He'd rather campaign on the problem than actually create a solution, which tells you everything you need to know, not that you needed any other evidence, to what Donald Trump actually, or how he views his job as the president. He does not view his job as a president as a public servant. And I think that has been abundantly clear from day one. Donald Trump is not a public servant. Donald Trump is self-serving. And he has operated the presidency in that fashion. So he doesn't care about how many checks that TSA wins or TSA loses, excuse me. Donald Trump does not care about how many checks TSA workers lose because he wants a political victory in something else. And what I showed you earlier was just one piece of it. Because then in this same conversation, Donald Trump is bringing up trans people, saying that he wants something in there to, what was the word he used? Mutilization? To protect people from mutilization. The hell that got to do with airport lines? So on top of wanting to throw in what is essentially a voter suppression bill, he like, oh, by the way, while we at it, don't give in to anything that would allow TSA to get paid if, because we need to put this voter suppression bill and then we need to throw some trans people in there just for sport, just to add a little spice to it, just to sprinkle a little cinnamon on it. Throw some trans people under the bus real quick. Because we know everybody will react to that and they won't even care about how we're trying to suppress the vote and make it harder for the vote. You just attach it to some trans people and people will vote exactly how they want to. And I wish, and I say that facetiously, but I'm saying that because of how effective that campaign actually is. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of the material or a lot of the news reports and the stories that are done on farmers and people who had industries that would be directly impacted by Trump's economic policies. P.S. He didn't really have a policy. It was just vibes. He never presented one. But, y'all could talk about how there was no tangibles for Kamala Harris. Just keep talking about it. At any rate, so many of them are losing their farms. Many of them are going into bankruptcy. He's basically doing the same thing to them that he did when he was president before. But the majority of farmers voted for this man 3 times, despite the fact he's already put you out of business. To which I ask, if you are any kind of business person and tariffs directly impact your business, why would you elect somebody who is going to bankrupt you? So you mean to tell me, why would you elect somebody who told you they believe in mass deportation? And the people that keep saying, well, I thought he just meant the criminals. He pretty much spelled out, y'all can all get it. You just thought you were special, and that didn't mean he was coming after your workforce. If you were a business owner who depended on undocumented workers, who depended on your business running a certain way without the influence of tariffs, why the hell would you vote for Donald Trump? So you mean to tell me you were so bothered by 10 NCAA athletes that were trans playing sports that you decided to bankrupt your business? You were so bothered by the fact that there's probably in high schools nationwide less than 200 trans athletes that you thought bankrupting your business was a good idea. I'm just trying to follow the logic. You thought that it was worth it to bankrupt your business over a population that makes up less than 1% of this country. Does that make sense? I don't care if somebody trans cuts you off in traffic every day of your life. You basically said, I'd rather be bankrupt and starve than for this trans girl to be out there playing soccer. I don't understand this. And it just lets you know the power of racism, bigotry, and transphobia in this country. And even when it came to the border, you live in no border area and you voting about a border you ain't close to. Huh? To bankrupt your business? When your business relies on undocumented people? Is the math mathing? The math doesn't math at all. You voted to basically destroy your own life because you were worried that a trans kid somewhere was playing softball that you have never met, that you don't see, and you don't even know any trans people probably in your life, much less your town. But then I shouldn't be surprised, because if we go back to the great old wonderful days of segregation, for those of you who may not be history buffs or have studied it, or maybe you know and can certainly confirm what I'm about to say, is that the reason that a lot of inner cities don't have pools anymore is because once desegregation happened, rather than create policies or an environment where everybody was welcome at these public pools, a lot of the city governments at the time decided to either drain the pool and pave over it or just shut down the pool entirely. So the mentality in this country has always been from the standpoint of, rather than share, I'd rather nobody have it. So they chose, this is all true. Like one of the most telling, what is the word I'm looking for? Basically, you can tell a lot about the history of racial relations in this country through the pool and desegregation. So they chose to be hot all summer and use the sprinkler and the hose when they could have been chilling in the public pool just because they didn't want Black people to have it. And that is that's a pervasive political mentality. They rather sacrifice what could be good and helpful for everybody because they can't get over their own bigotry, racism, and allegiance to white supremacy. So the explosion in private pools, the explosion in country clubs, people having their own pool, is actually directly attributable to racism and desegregation. So country clubs began to spring up even more after public pools were closed, because then you could legally keep certain members out. Read Black people. Because you had a membership requirement. And you could keep Black people out of the pool because they ain't want to share. They instead chose for everybody to be hot. And then spend tons more money on these exclusive clubs and to build a pool in their backyard because they didn't want to share. So this is the same mentality of why we are where we are. It's why you and many others across this country are suffering through 5-6 hour long lines at security. Because of that mentality is now how we're operating as a country. Now, moving on along those same lines, as we discuss where we are politically right now, let's talk about the war in Iran, because it is a war. This is how you know shit is bad, okay? You know shit is bad when the president says something about the war that you don't quite believe, and you find yourself going to Iranian news sources to figure out what to believe and what not to believe. So the president said that we have been, or he has been, or the administration, I'll just say the administration, has been, he backed off some of his war plans of continuing, of bombing to try to get the Strait of Hormuz open. And he said it's because of very productive talks that he has had with Iran. Iran said, I don't know what you're talking about. Ain't been no talking. So this tweet is from Iran actually issued a statement. By the way, Iranian officials are all over social media. And, you can get all that translated. And when you follow them, you get an entirely different picture of the war. Now, of course, the Iranians, much like the Americans, are trying to traffic in some propaganda. But there is definitely some things that are ringing to be true. Now, Trump said that he is backing off his plans. And, I guess, did I have the original Trump tweet in here? I guess I don't. Okay, so this is what Trump said originally, before I get into this right here, in a post on Truth Social, where we should be going to breaking news for the president. Interesting. On Truth Social, Donald Trump said this: I am pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had, over the last 2 days, very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. Based on the tenor and tone of these in-depth, detailed, and constructive conversations, which, by the way, and actually, this is too good. I'm going to have to show you guys this. I was reading it from my phone. I'm going to have to show you guys this because you just won't believe it. I mean, you will believe it, but you won't believe it. So let me just show it to you. Okay. This is, again, the the latest from Donald Trump about the war in Iran, which I guess we're supposed to believe is not a war. All right, so this is what the president said. Again, I'll start from the top because this is something. I'm pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had, over the last 2 days, very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. Based on the tenor and tone of these in-depth, detailed, and constructive conversations, which, not W-H-I-C-H, W-I-T-C-H, like a witch that was burned at the stake back in the day. Witch. Interesting. That witch, I mean, who knows? I guess kicking people's asses, including the president's, which will continue throughout the week. I have instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period, subject to the success of the ongoing meetings and discussions. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So according to Trump, he's stopping the military strikes and his plan to strike Iranian power plants because the Iranians have come to the negotiation table and they have decided, hey, let's work this out because they're in fear of Donald J. Trump. Meanwhile, here's what Iran had to say. Iran issues a statement denying President Trump's post, which claimed the U.S. and Iran have had, quote, productive conversations to end the Iran war. Iran says, okay, there have been no indirect or direct contact with President Trump. President Trump is trying to, quote, buy time in the Iran war. President Trump withdrew from power plant strikes after Iran's firm warning. President Trump's comments are psychological warfare. Hormuz will not return to pre-war conditions as long as psychological warfare continues. Iran has entirely denied all of President Trump's claims. Basically, to sum up, Iran said, use a lie. We ain't even talked to you, dog. Which says everything about where we are right now. Did you ever think that we'd get to a point where we have to fact check with the Iranians about what the president of the United States is saying? Iran was like, we standing on business. We ain't opening nothing. Because Iran has promised to also attack very vulnerable points. I saw a military analyst bring this up, and I thought it was something that was very astute and very true. The United States is not fighting the same war Iran is. Iran knows, like, head up, that they can't beat the United States. Our military is more powerful. It's more sophisticated. We the goons. We got muscles. Iran then has decided, well, we don't want to fight you head up. What we will do is collapse your entire economy. Hence why them gas prices look the way that they do. Because they already know the soft spots. And it's why the majority of Americans are against this war. I live in LA. Gas already high. We pay a gas tax. It's fine. But now, gas is like $6.30 around these parts. Sister like me gonna be getting her walk on quite a bit. I've never been more thankful that my office is within 20 minutes of my house. Trust me. So Iran is going after the economy while they are bombing different things. And, sometimes fights aren't about who wins the fight, quote unquote. Sometimes fights are about who can take a punch. And Iran has basically told the U.S. in no uncertain terms, we don't have a glass chin. They're willing to do whatever it takes to humiliate the United States. They don't have a bottom. And they are telling the United States this repeatedly. Hence why, the last 11 presidents have been very hesitant to start any shenanigans with Iran because they already know what time it is. So the president came out and said, oh, no, they're negotiating. And the stock prices immediately went up. And there have been a lot of people who are drawing that through line and saying, gas is getting out of control and rising. And then suddenly the president seems to not be telling the truth about negotiations going on with Iran. Iran is like, we ain't talked to him. We don't know that man. Like Keke Palmer, I'm sorry to this man. I don't know that man. That's what they have told the public. He's lying to you. We ain't talking about nothing. Not the price of tea, the price of gas, the price of nothing. No comunicado. And so because of that, people believe that Trump came out with that post on Truth Social as a way to stem the economic downturn that feels like it's on our neck. And so maybe some of his Wall Street friends and his billionaire buddies can continue to make money. And there are more than a few economic analysts and experts who have already said the economy in America in its current state is built on a house of cards right now. We built on vibes right now because there are so many recession indicators across the board. So I ask you, who do you believe more? The Iranians or Donald Trump? And it's a shame that in our year, the year of our Lord, 2026, that we have to ask this question about our own president. Because he possesses such little credibility because he lies all the time. Because if I'm not mistaken, is this the same Iran that they said they neutralized that threat? Didn't they say that last year? Did they neutralize the threat of nuclear happenings and whatnot? Didn't they already say that? And then all of a sudden, oh, no, we got to start war. The threat is imminent. So you let Netanyahu, who's been trying to get about 5, 6, 7, 10 presidents to go along with this scam of attacking Iran, and you were the one that fell for it. Just saying. It says a lot that the Iranians seem more credible in the information and transparency than the president of the United States. Says a lot. All right, finally, because I was trying to wrap this on time, or to some degree on time, and I still, of course, plan to answer your questions or comments and respond to those. But real quick, on the sports front, I want to get to two things. One, the WNBA players, in case you don't know, they have ratified the CBA, the new collective bargaining agreement, a new 7-year agreement. They can opt out after 6 years. It's a landmark agreement in a lot of respects. The average salary now for a WNBA player will be about $583,000 per season. Now, to let you know from whence they came, the average salary for the WNBA player just last year was about between $100,000 and $120,000 a year. And looking at the rookies, Paige Beckers, as a rookie, Paige Beckers made $78,000. There are definitely plumbers and electricians that make more than that. So this year, with the new CBA, Paige will be making a little underneath $500,000. Caitlin Clark as a rookie, I think Caitlin Clark, let me make sure I'm accurate about this, but Caitlin Clark, her salary last season was a little over $78,000 as well. This year, under the new CBA, she will make $527,000. And even more importantly, next year, or in 2028, she'll be eligible for the Supermax contract, which will pay her more than $1 million per season. I think this is obviously, now that we know the terms, this is a great thing for the WNBA. However, this is my one however, that being said, is, okay, you all, because it's too many of y'all that are trying to act like you're the accountants for the WNBA, and you just sound ridiculous. But this is what I want people to understand. If you look at what is the trajectory of the league right now, where we have franchise valuations going through the roof, this league is worth estimated around $4 billion. They just signed a new media rights deal that was worth $2.2 billion. You have 5 new franchises that will start between now and 2030. Since 2023, because this includes Golden State, just so you understand the economics, the WNBA has been able to get $1 billion in expansion fees that go directly to the owners. And there are more teams and more cities that want WNBA teams. So let's just say that the WNBA continues on this trajectory. Last year, it set another ratings record, set another attendance record. If this league continues going up, and this is why that opt-out year is important. Do you know by the back half of this deal, this will be considered a steal for the WNBA owners? Because what is a max salary that won't exceed? I think they said the most the max salary could exceed is like 2.3 million. That's like the cutoff. That is nothing. Let's just take Asia Wilson in particular. Asia Wilson is a 3-time WNBA champion, a 4-time league MVP. The Las Vegas Aces, on the foundation of Asia Wilson's success, are now worth $400 million. Mark Davis got in with the Aces for under $10 million. His investment is worth $400 million, built on the back of getting a generational player. Do you know what kind of value and return that is for a WNBA owner? So whenever y'all out here talking real stupid about the WNBA finances, think about that. Think about what some of these franchises started at and worth now. So to pay, if you're Mark Davis and the investment that you got in for less than 10 million is now worth 400 million, and you only have to pay the best player on the team 1.4 million, man, you'll take that every time. You will take that and run every time. He can't write Asia Wilson this check fast enough. So while there is definitely a lot to celebrate in this new CBA, keep in mind that the owners are still going to make out like bandits. Like bandits. Let's take the Indiana Fever. Indiana Fever, as you might imagine, their valuation has skyrocketed because they got Caitlin Clark. If the max they got to pay Caitlin Clark is $2.3 million, if that's the most she can make as a supermax player, their franchise, especially, like if you caught any part of what Caitlin Clark looked like in the FIBA World Cup, she looked incredible. She looked like I'm coming for something. I'm leaving here with something after this WNBA season. Caitlin Clark is arguably one of the most valuable players from a money standpoint in the league. Some would say the most valuable. I'll let you have it. Do you know what the valuation is going to be for the Fever by the time the end of her contract is up? They would write Caitlin Clark a check for $2.3 million right now if they could. Right now. So, for as much as the ladies have come up, and I'm happy that there's a league that they can play at in the United States and make a lot of money, this deal, and in a way, this is kind of what you hope for, because that means the WNBA is at a certain place. This deal is going to be one of the most lucrative they could have possibly done for the owners. So when people are out here hemming and hawing, talking about how much money they losing, I just laugh, because I'm like, do you know that the reason why they're able to add so many franchises is because the billionaires know a good bargain when they see it. They understand where the league is right now, which is why the players were pressing as hard as they were to get the money they deserve, because they know what's coming down the pike. They understand the money that's about to be made. It took the NBA 25, 30 years to be profitable, and then it hit like a flash. And we see the very same thing happening in this league. So the time to negotiate isn't after you've already made the money. The time to negotiate is before. So yes. And I see you still losing 30 to 50 million. What year? Have you seen the WNBA books? You have not, have you? Most people have not. The WNBA does not open their books. Professional sports leagues don't open their books. You know why they don't open their books? It's because sports teams tend to be really great tax shelters. They don't want people looking at the math. They don't want them looking at the accounting. They don't also want people making the same distinction I just made, which is, so let me get this straight. You're losing money and your franchise is worth how much? That if you sold it right now, you would get this. And I'm telling you, if the WNBA was a bad investment, the way some of y'all part-time economists like to make it seem, then why would they all be lining up to get into the league? As it is right now, as part of a capital raise that the WNBA did a few years ago, they're trying to get back the 16% of ownership stake that they sold as part of the capital raise. They were able to raise $75 million. When Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner, around the time she first started, they needed an infusion of cash. They sold that 16%, and they're right now trying to buy it back. If the WNBA is such a bad investment, why is the NBA trying to buy it back? Why? Because they know the money that is now there. They know it. Again, you don't know that. You have no idea. And by the way, you're going off last year or the year before. Come back right here next year or in the next 2 years. Just come on back so I can tell you to your face you're wrong. I'm going to make it real easy for you because you're not making sense. So this deal is going to wind up paying off so much. Golly, it is. What an investment. All right, one more thing. Final thing that I want to get to, and I don't know if guys know if you guys saw it, but this was something happened. This is in the women's tournament. Something happened in the Maryland-North Carolina game, which North Carolina eventually won. North Carolina was a 4 seed. I think Maryland was a 5. Was Maryland a 5 seed? I can't remember. I think they might have been a 5. I couldn't remember exactly what seed that they were. But in the third quarter, when Maryland, I believe, was down, Brenda Freese, longtime coach in Maryland, very good coach, very well respected. She had an intense conversation with her guard, Aluchi Okinawa and Okananwan. Hopefully I'm pronounced that right, but Aluchi, that is her name. And it went viral because of the intensity of the conversation.
This is just a short time ago. Trying to read lips there. Yeah, that's coach and star player.
Okay, so Brenda Freese, she is all in Aluchi's face, but I think you can read her lips and you can see what she's saying. And it is true. She's saying, I believe in you. You need to do better. There was a lot of people who responded on social media wondering about the optics of it, saying that it, it didn't look right, and, just had various comments about the interaction itself. Didn't think it was a good look. Thought it looked a little too aggressive. But here is what Aluchi had to say after, when she was asked about that interaction, which I think is important.
Coach understands I'm a competitor at heart, and I've told her this before, and I'll keep on telling her this until forever. I love to be coached hard, and that's what she does with me every single day. And really what that was a regroup moment for myself, and her telling me she believed in me, because sometimes that's really all you need to hear to get back out there. It's a long game, lots of ups and downs, and I feel like after that conversation, that's when I really went back out and just did what I had to do for my team in that moment.
Now, for further context, okay, Brenda Freese confronted her, her star player after, I think she traveled, she hit like only 1 out of 4 free throws during a specific 3-minute span. She missed the layup, and that's when she subbed her out. So she was out there not playing very well. And that's when she pulled her aside and had to give her that. And so you can see, and Aluchi is a really good player. Like, she first team, all Big Ten, averaging 17 a game, 5 rebounds. And yes, and I was right. The Terrapins were the 5th seed. I thought it was a 4-5 matchup, but, just wanted to be sure about that. Now, I don't want to play the you've never played sports card. I'm going to instead look at this from a perspective of a conversation that we have too often when it comes to women, and especially when it comes to in the field of competition, is that as a public, some of us need to grow up. And the same things that you applaud in male players by male coaches that you see as simply part of the game, those same things exist inside the space of the women's game as well. And we have this double standard when it comes to how women are supposed to be competing, how they're supposed to be coached. Like, we want to coddle them. And I don't understand why. I don't understand why. And they're not asking to be coddled. That's why I said we as a sports public need to grow up. Now, I played sports in high school. My coach was tough but fair. Now, my coach never got into my face quite like that. But when I was messing up, my coach let me know about it. There is, in sports, a theme of accountability that must be part of the culture of any team that you're on. I don't believe coaches should ever put their hands on players. And her putting her finger in her face, I don't consider it to be that. I think Brenda Freese was just being a good coach. And more importantly, the best coaches understand how they need to relate to every player differently. Aluchi even said it. I love to be coached hard. She knows and requires that from the person who's coaching her. And it's a sign of good coaching that coach recognizes, hey, my star is kind of coming apart out there. Let me gather her and let her know, hey, we need you. We believe in you. We need you to kind of pull yourself together because we got a game to win. And they didn't win it, but the whole point is that was a coaching moment and it was supposed to be. And so all the people out there who have a lot of issues with it, and I understand optically what it looks like. I get that. You got a white woman talking to a young Black woman in a manner that some people look at as aggressive. But to me, this is sports. And while I do think there's a lot of coaches or some coaches who I know who I consider to go over the line. Again, you put your hands on a player, you asking for something else. But when it comes to getting them to respond, absolutely they can pull that lever. Absolutely. And I listen, some of y'all must not know the legendary stories told about Pat Summitt or about Gino Auriemma. Now, certainly publicly between those two coaches, I think Pat Summitt was probably way more demonstrative. But Gino Auriemma, like when you talk to his former players about some of the things that he says in practice to some of his best players, to really all of his players. When I tell you that man will read you for filth, I mean, he's not reading you for filth unnecessarily. He's reading you for filth because he knows you're capable of better. Much like a lot of coaches. That's kind of what they do. Is they're supposed to push the button that's going to bring out the best. Now, every player can't relate to that. And I think as a coach, you need to know that. You need to know that, hey, everybody don't need to be talked to that way. It's some that I need to relate to differently to get the best out of them. It's others I need to relate to just like this so that I can get them to be at their best. It's what excellence requires. So I didn't have a single solitary problem with how Coach Freese chose to address her player. And guess what? Neither did her player. Now, sometimes, especially with young players, you have to be on a bit of the lookout because they're in a system, where they don't have the better of the power dynamic. So sometimes there is a concern and a fear that they're just going along with this type of interaction just because they're worried about it might affect their play. They're loyal to the program, that kind of thing. But I don't think that's what this was. I think that was a coach in real time realizing what her player needed from her in that moment. And she delivered. And for that matter, Alushi responded afterwards with how she played, even though they didn't win the game. So I think this is much to do about nothing. And the only reason we're talking about this is because it involves two women. And that's where sometimes it can be frustrating because I think there's a lot of old conditioning we need to let go when it comes to how women are supposed to compete. We went through this with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. So what if they don't like each other? I don't know that they do. I don't know that they don't. I'm not saying that I know or have insight, but if they don't, so what? Men don't like each other all the time. And y'all said that's better. Y'all complain all day, every day about how NBA players too friendly. You get two star players that don't like each other and y'all out there writing think pieces about, well, why can't they get along? And why don't they just sit around and braid each other's hair and swap recipes? It's like these women compete on a fierce level. They're going for something big. So yeah, sometimes they're not going to like each other. And it's okay for women to not do that. I hear the same thing in hip hop. Drake and Kendrick can beef all day long, but let it be Cardi B and Nicki. Women supposed to get along. Why don't they like each other? Why do you care? They're competitors. They're rivals. Who cares? Women are not obligated to like other women just because it's a woman. In the field of competition, that's okay. We're all right. We will survive. Anyway, before I get out of here, I'm going to get to a couple of your comments and questions, whatever you have going. I saw a number of good ones going back and forth. Let's see. What do we got here? Absolutely, she wasn't going to say anything bad about her coach. No, but I got the feeling that it was genuine. Pat Summitt went into labor, and instead of going into the hospital, she went on a recruiting trip. Yes, this is a very infamous story, and it's all true. She did. I was like, Pat Summitt wasn't playing no games. She was not for the weak of the faint of heart. That's for sure. Let's see. Anybody else? Let me scroll up a little bit. A relationship is a relationship no matter the color or race. If you both have a good relationship, it's all good. It is. That's why guys like Isaiah Thomas love Bob Knight as his college coach. Bobby Knight, though, I'm going to be honest. That's in a different category to me. Bobby Knight put his hands on players. And to me, that shit is a no-no. And we talking about, fighting players, putting his, I forgot which player he put his hands around his neck. No. Once you start doing stuff like that, you lose me. That's not tough coaching. That's being a jerk. So no, I don't put Bobby Knight in the same category. All right. Let's see. Get to a couple more as I scroll back up. I think I already addressed you. All right. Okay, let me scroll down now. Thank you. It was Neil Reed. You are absolutely right, Damon. I could not remember. I knew it was a player. He choked him in the locker room. Listen, don't do it. Don't do it. So short of putting your hands on somebody, no. That is a absolute no-no for a coach. All right, I went a little bit over. Sorry about that. I try to keep these to an hour or less, if not shorter, but thank you for joining me for another episode of SPOLITICS Live. You can catch me here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And, plenty to talk about all the time. I appreciate the support. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out. Tell a friend and join me here again on Wednesday. And a reminder, make sure you check out today's flagrant and funny episode. New one should drop in a little bit. I just have to listen back to the interview and or listen back to the podcast and give them any notes, and then it'll be up. But appreciate the support. Y'all be easy and continue to stay tuned to Politics Live. Talk to you soon.